Hello, welcome to Fulham Palace. I'm one of the volunteer guides. Today is an introductory video. I'm one of the humble volunteers. You may know me from my Alexander's Corner on YouTube. I'm also a tour guide at the British Museum and V&A, and today is like no place on earth. We're at Fulham Palace in this beautiful courtyard with a great hall just behind me. This place was a hospital in the First World War, and it was also a beautiful garden in the back. That's where the original Kew Garden was, created by Bishop Crompton. And this courtyard has a rather spookier feel, with echoes of the past going right back to the Neolithic age. I was really taken here in 2012, not when the film was created, with my dad, who was in the army, and I was overjoyed to become a volunteer here. Absolutely life-changing for me as someone with disability to be a volunteer in a beautiful place like this hidden gem. My ancestors are bishops in Belgium, so I always felt rather connected to religious buildings like this. It's even in my book, which you can buy on Amazon as well. This courtyard is rather special to me as a volunteer. I've been to many jazz concerts here with my mum and brother and sister. I feel rather connected through my heart and soul in this place. I will always be part of this place, like Mike Myers was with his death mask, or a bit less grim, I feel. Here you have more choice of hot chocolates, which I'm sure he didn't. And I really love the fact that I always keep on learning something about the church, which is what I think is very important, to have a good moral compass in life which will guide you to the afterlife. Now, I hope you're not too possessed just yet. We are going to go into a great hall, the chapel, the library, the garden. If you don't have an addiction to this place now, you will by the end of this video. We're now in the Great Hall at Fulham Palace. This is one of my favourite halls, used for medieval feasting, and I really like this hall for the paintings, the stained glass, and I really enjoyed the personal memories of me here as a volunteer, enjoying the very unholy wine tasting that we had with the other Chelsea pensioners whilst talking about the Second World War. And the palace was used as a hospital in the First World War, and the Great Hall was used for like reading, dancing, feasting, for numerous non-depressing activities, which I really liked. It does go to show that even though without technology, they were still able to have a great time, even without mobile phones, which you can hear in the background right now. So that has its benefits. My favourite painting, which you must see when you come here, is Margaret of Anjou, who has no head. So you count on this head to tell you that this will get you a head when you see this palace with this beautiful painting. We also have Henry VIII, who I do not like. I wouldn't invite him to my dinner party. No. And I would also really like Henry Tudor, who was the first Tudor and was much more of a boss than Henry VIII. I first went to the palace with my father in 2012, not to be mixed up with the film, of course. And now we will go into the chapel just before I have lunch, hopefully. So I hope you won't get too possessed by these videos, and I'll see you in the chapel. Ciao, ciao. Here we are in the chapel at Fulham Palace. I'm gonna not give you a sermon just yet, but a small introductory talk into the chapel, which began here by Bishop Wald here, Anglo-Saxon name, which is always hard to pronounce, in the 8th century. And it's been a chapel ever since then. Every bishop that came into the palace had a different room, or even this room as a chapel that he consecrated. This is what we call an unconsecrated chapel, which means there's no masses, but people can still visit. And it's a beautiful chapel to visit, one of the hidden gems of Fulham Palace. You have the beautiful mosaics, you have the stained glass, you have a haunted organ that plays randomly at midnight. And I really like the fact that Prince Philip is here for eternity in the chapel as well. This is one of my favourite hidden gems. And we are going to talk even further about hidden gems, which is the library. So now we're going to head off to the library, where I was a librarian in lockdown. This library is the Bishop's Porteous Library, named after Bishop Porteous, who died sadly in 1809. He's my favourite bishop. The bishop's motto, as it were, was fortitude, fortitude through strength. Fortitude in Latin is translated as strength. And I really love this room because when I was here as a young whippersnapper librarian, I did a day of filming with the Antiques Roadshow. And my favourite books aren't the Bibles here, it's the books written by Shelley, the author of Frankenstein. We have first editions here, which are amazingly beautifully written. And I really love the wine cellar below. You can always count on the bishops having excellent wines in the wine cellar. The rumour appeared during a time of the Second World War that the chaplain was too terrified to stay in the wine cellar overnight, so he pitched up his tent in the garden, refusing to be in the shelter with the bishop and the bishop's wives in the palace. So I really like these little stories which lead up to the present, which make the volunteering here so fascinating. The library itself was once a chapel. When you come in here, you see the vaulted ceiling, which is always stunning. I was very fortunate never to have the opportunity to work in a normal office. So this right here was my office in lockdown. And I'm very grateful to Fulham Palace, the bishops, and my ancestors who were bishops, that led up to the now, to me being a volunteer here right now, as it were. It wasn't until the 16th century that the bishops, in the time of the Reformation, were allowed to get married, so this opened up the palace to the heart of the community, which led to it being more involved within the city of London, like the garden parties, and it later became famous for. It also became a people's palace because of events like Apple Day, Market Day, which led to the palace to being part of the community. Today, this led to special event days like Apple Day, which are very important days in the palace's diary. And now we're going to go further into the museum and have a closer glance at the bishop's mitre and cloak, which you'll find in the museum. And there's a little sub-story which I'll tell once we have arrived into the museum. See you there. We're here in the museum and we're going to talk about 133 bishops that have been here. The first one was Bishop Waldo, who started Fulham Palace in the early 8th century AD. And today the object in focus is this wonderful mitre and cape and the hook staff of the bishop, which was very important. The hats were very important, the mitre, which was very important for status back in the day. So the bishops could be seen as more enlightened people from the average folks who wouldn't be able to afford the hats. So back in the day, the mitres showed to everyone that they were indeed bishops, only to be worn on ceremonial occasions, not day to day when one is having a bath. I think this is a really special insight. The joke amongst the volunteers is that the last bishop who wore this wore it for Prince William and Kate's wedding in London, but he was too fat. So the cape and gown had to be packed back to the museum, and the bishop hasn't worn it since then. He was too embarrassed once. He was seen to be too large for the cape. But don't tell him that when you next see him at the ceremonial outings in St. Paul's. I think I would rather look rather good in this cape as my ancestor was a bishop. So we're now going to go even further back in time into the Neolithic age. So I hope you'll join me even further back, and I hope you'll find this to your liking. Ciao, ciao for now. We're going back in time to the time of the Neolithic, 6,000 years from before the bishops were here. It goes to show that the Neolithic axe heads are proof of the community at Fulham Palace. It's a beautiful hidden gem for learning about the Neolithic age, the Ice Age, and the prehistory of Fulham Palace, which is on for layers and layers. The best way of seeing this is reading books on mudlarking and going on mudlarking tours around the Thames with the archaeologists at Fulham Palace, which I've done on Thames mudlarking. The thing about prehistory and Neolithic history is searching for it along the banks, along the river, with fabulous archaeologists like Alexis from Fulham Palace who really know their stuff, and that enlightened me to pass from the time of way before Tudor history. So if you're interested in Neolithic history, please do visit the museum here. We even have a dead dog here, so there's lots of whiffingly good stuff here to see. I'm off now to go and have a look at the beautiful walled garden where I'm having a tour with my Bishop Crompton. We're not in the Garden of Eden, we're at Fulham Palace Garden. We're going to talk a bit about the bishops of this garden who helped create it, bring it to life. The first bishop is Bishop Crompton, who planted the red cedar trees, which are one of my favourites. They come from America. We also have a 500-year-old tree. That's an oak tree. That's just outside the walled garden. It's one of my favourites because it's over 500 years old. It still blows my mind whenever I see it. I have loved gardening here as a volunteer. We did the beautiful wisteria garden plant, which is purple, which is the bishop's colour. It's been very famous, this garden, for the garden parties, which are bringing the community closer. We also really loved doing the green meets, the apple days, which are all important days to come to in the calendar of this beautiful garden. I've also really enjoyed in the past visiting the Shakespeare trails and plays that they host in the summer here. This is really a hidden gem. My garden is my favourite one here, even over the Garden of Eden. I would highly recommend visiting. Thank you for joining us. I hope you'll join us here soon. I'm now off to go into the museum to have a further adventure.